What if the most legendary sea monster in all of human history was never actually a monster at all, but something even more extraordinary? For thousands of years, sailors came home from long voyages at sea with wild, terrified eyes and even wilder stories. They spoke of enormous tentacles rising from the black water without warning, wrapping around ships, pulling brave men screaming into the deep. They spoke of eyes the size of dinner plates staring up from beneath the waves. They drew pictures of coiling arms thick as tree trunks and beaks sharp enough to snap a grown man in half. Ancient Norse sailors called it the kraken, a creature so massive it was sometimes mistaken for an island. Sailors would anchor their boats on its back, light fires, cook their dinner, and only realize their terrible mistake when the island began to move beneath them and slowly, silently sink back into the sea. For centuries, the world filed these stories away under the comfortable label of myth. Sea monsters were what frightened, sun-baked, exhausted sailors invented to explain bad weather, treacherous currents, and the general terror of being alone on a vast and indifferent ocean. No serious scientist gave them much thought. No respectable researcher put Hunt the Kraken on their list of professional priorities. The giant squid, if it existed at all, was considered nothing more than a colorful piece of ocean folklore, right alongside mermaids and ghost ships and cursed treasure. And then the bodies started washing ashore. Throughout the 1800s, strange and deeply unsettling things began appearing on beaches around the world, mostly along the coastlines of Newfoundland, New Zealand, and Norway. Enormous tentacles. Massive rubbery arms as thick as a man's torso, covered in powerful suckers lined with sharp teeth-like edges. Huge chunks of flesh that smelled of the deep sea and didn't match any known creature. And then, in 1878, two fishermen in Thimble-Tickle Bay, Newfoundland, Canada, encountered something that stopped the entire scientific world cold. They found a giant squid, a real, complete, undeniable giant squid, stranded in shallow water near the shore. It measured an astonishing 59 feet from the tip of its mantle to the end of its two longest tentacles. Its body alone was as long as a school bus. Its eyes were the size of frisbees. Its 8 arms were lined with hundreds of powerful suckers, each one ringed with sharp serrated edges like tiny circular saws. The fisherman tied a rope around its tail, hitched it to a tree, and waited for it to die. When they finally reported what they had found, scientists rushed to examine the evidence. The giant squid, known formally as Architeuthis dux, was real. It was not a myth. It was not a sailor's nightmare. It was an actual living animal, sharing the ocean with us, and it was absolutely enormous. But here was the truly maddening part. Despite that discovery, despite the occasional stranded body, despite fragments of tentacles found in the stomachs of sperm whales, despite every piece of tantalizing evidence collected over more than a century, nobody had ever seen a living giant squid in its natural habitat. Not once. Not a single photograph. Not a single frame of video. Scientists knew it existed, knew roughly where it lived, knew it grew to extraordinary sizes, and yet the living animal itself remained completely invisible, hiding in the deep ocean with infuriating success. For over 100 years after that 1878 discovery, the giant squid remained the largest animal on Earth that no living human being had ever seen alive in the wild. To understand why this was so difficult, you have to understand where giant squids actually live. They are not surface creatures. They do not swim in shallow coastal waters where boats and divers can easily reach them. Giant squids live in what oceanographers call the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones, the deep midwater and deep ocean layers stretching from roughly 1,000 feet to over 3,000 feet below the surface. This is a world of perpetual twilight and absolute darkness, crushing pressure, and near-freezing temperatures. It is a world that has no light from above, where the pressure would kill an unprotected human instantly, and where the ocean is so vast and so deep that searching for a single animal, even a 40-foot-long one, is like searching for a specific grain of sand somewhere on all the beaches of the world combined. Scientists tried everything. They dropped baited cameras into the deep. They sent remotely operated vehicles bristling with lights and recording equipment. They tagged sperm whales, the giant squid's primary predator, hoping to follow them to their hunting grounds. They analyzed stomach contents, tracked distribution patterns, built mathematical models of where the squid should be based on water temperature and prey availability. They got tentacle fragments. They got beak fragments. They got long, frustrating years of nothing at all. The scientific community began to develop something of an obsession. The giant squid became the holy grail of marine biology, the one creature that everyone knew existed and nobody could find. Graduate students wrote entire doctoral theses about an animal they had never seen. Museums displayed specimens preserved in formaldehyde, dead, grey, deflated things that gave no real sense of the living animal's power or beauty. The Natural History Museum in London had one of the largest preserved specimens in the world, floating in a tank of fixative solution, and thousands of people came every year to stare at it with a mixture of wonder and dissatisfaction. This was real, they knew. But what did it look like alive, down in the dark, hunting? The answer finally came in 2004, through the patience, brilliance, and sheer stubborn determination of two Japanese marine scientists, Dr. Tsunemi Kubodera of the National Science Museum of Japan and Kyoichi Mori of the Ogasawara Whale Watching Association. Together they had spent years studying sperm whale behavior around the Ogasawara Islands, a remote volcanic archipelago about 600 miles south of Tokyo in the northwest Pacific Ocean. Sperm whales, they knew, dived to extraordinary depths to hunt giant squid. Sperm whale carcasses regularly turned up with fresh sucker scars on their heads, circular wounds left by the squid's serrated suckers during violent underwater struggles. If any place in the ocean was likely to produce giant squids, it was here, in these waters, where the whales hunted. Kubodera and Mori designed a deceptively simple system. They lowered a baited camera rig, carrying a squid-shaped lure and bait made from ground-up shrimp, to a depth of around 3,000 feet and left it there for hours at a time, attached to a floating buoy on the surface. Then they waited. For months, they hauled the rig back up and reviewed hours of footage showing nothing but empty dark water, slowly drifting particles, and the occasional passing fish. They went back out. They lowered it again. They waited some more. On September 30, 2004, at approximately 900 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean near the Ogasawara Islands, something extraordinary happened. A giant squid attacked the bait. The camera captured over 500 photographs over the course of about 4 hours, the first images ever taken of a living Architeuthis ducks in its natural deep-sea environment. The squid was aggressive, powerful, and absolutely magnificent. It wrapped 2 of its long tentacles around the bait in a technique scientists called a tentacle strike, lunging forward with extraordinary speed, enveloping the lure in a tangle of muscular arms, and pulling hard. The photographs showed an animal that was vivid, dynamic, and completely unlike the grey deflated specimens in museum tanks. In its natural environment, the giant squid was a fierce and capable predator. Not a passive drifting blob but an active, intelligent hunter with eyes that could see in near total darkness and arms strong enough to overpower prey much larger than itself. The scientific world erupted. After more than a century of searching, after decades of near misses and frustrating dead ends, the image of a living giant squid was finally in human hands. Newspapers around the world ran the story on their front pages. Marine biologists who had spent their entire careers chasing this animal wept when they saw the photographs. It was one of those rare moments in modern science when something almost mythological suddenly becomes real, when the line between legend and fact dissolves completely and the world becomes, in an instant, a stranger and more wonderful place than it was the day before. But the photographs, extraordinary as they were, only sharpened the hunger for more. Scientists now wanted video. They wanted to see the animal moving, to watch it hunt, to understand its behavior, to observe how it used its arms and its jet propulsion system and its enormous eyes in real time. Kubodera returned to the Ogasawara Islands repeatedly over the following years, each time refining his methods and pushing deeper. Then, in December 2006, using a much smaller camera rig attached to a fishing line and baited with a live squid, he captured the first ever video footage of a giant squid in its natural habitat, this time at a shallower depth of around 600 feet, where a juvenile giant squid, about 11 feet long, came to investigate the bait. The footage showed the animal's skin flashing with bioluminescent color changes, its arms moving with fluid grace, its enormous eye regarding the camera with what looked, in the deeply human way that we cannot help but interpret animal behavior, like intelligence. The next and perhaps most spectacular chapter came in January 2013, when a joint expedition involving the Japan Broadcasting Corporation (NHK), the American cable channel Discovery, and the oceanographer Dr. Edith Widder finally captured high-definition video footage of a giant squid in the deep ocean using a revolutionary new approach. Instead of bright artificial lights, which scientists had begun to suspect were scaring the squids away, Widder used a specially designed camera system called the Medusa, equipped with far-red light that is invisible to most deep-sea creatures, and a bioluminescent lure that mimicked the distress signals of a small jellyfish being attacked, a signal that, in the deep ocean, often attracts large predators looking for an easy meal. At a depth of around 2,000 feet in the Pacific Ocean near the Ogasawara Islands, a giant squid arrived. The footage was stunning beyond any previous expectation. The animal was large, estimated at around 10 to 13 feet for the mantle alone, suggesting a total length with tentacles of perhaps 25 to 30 feet. But what was most striking was its color. Every preserved specimen ever studied in a laboratory was pale, grayish, and lifeless-looking. The living animal in the deep ocean was completely different. It shimmered. Its skin was a deep, rich, iridescent silver and gold, catching the dim light and reflecting it back in glittering waves. It moved with breathtaking grace, its arms flowing like silk ribbons in the water, its mantle pulsing rhythmically as it adjusted its position. It approached the camera with what appeared to be bold curiosity, examining the strange glowing lure with those magnificent enormous eyes before deciding, apparently, that the situation was not quite right and gliding back into the darkness from which it had come. The footage aired to a global television audience of tens of millions. People sat in their living rooms and stared at their screens in something close to reverence. This was the Kraken. This was the monster of 1,000 sailor stories, the creature that had haunted maritime folklore for centuries. And it was not monstrous at all. It was breathtaking. It was beautiful. It was shimmering gold in the darkness of the deep Pacific, moving through its world with perfect elegance, entirely at home in conditions that would kill a human being in seconds. It had been there all along, going about its ancient life in the deep water, hunting, growing, dying, completely indifferent to the centuries of mythology it had inspired above. What science has since learned about the giant squid is extraordinary on almost every level. Architeuthis dux is found in all of the world's major oceans, from the North Atlantic to the South Pacific to the waters around Antarctica, living primarily in deep water between 1,000 and 3,000 feet. It grows to lengths of up to 43 feet in females and around 33 feet in males, making it one of the largest invertebrates on Earth, exceeded in size only by the colossal squid, Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni, which lives in the waters around Antarctica and may reach even greater weights if not lengths. The giant squid has the largest eyes of any living animal on the planet, up to 10 inches in diameter, an adaptation for detecting the faint bioluminescent flashes produced by other creatures in the near-total darkness of the deep ocean. It moves using jet propulsion, drawing water into its mantle cavity and expelling it through a muscular siphon to shoot itself forward or backward with surprising speed. Its arms are equipped with powerful suckers ringed with sharp serrated rings, the source of the circular scars found on the heads of sperm whales that hunt them. And the relationship between giant squid and sperm whale is itself one of the great dramas of the deep ocean. Two enormous animals, both highly intelligent by the standards of their respective classes, engaged in an ancient predator-prey struggle in complete darkness thousands of feet below the surface. Sperm whales regularly show fresh scars from giant squid suckers, and giant squid beaks are among the most common identifiable remains found in sperm whale stomachs. These are not gentle encounters. They are violent, powerful, desperate struggles between animals that have been fighting each other in the dark for millions of years. The giant squid likely has a relatively short lifespan. Scientists believe it may live only 3 to 5 years, growing at a remarkable rate to reach its enormous adult size before reproducing and dying. It is thought to be a relatively solitary hunter, ambushing prey, fish, other squids, and deep-sea crustaceans, with those extraordinary long tentacles, which can extend nearly twice the length of the body to strike at prey from a distance before reeling it back in toward the sharp, powerful beak. Despite its enormous size, it is itself preyed upon not only by sperm whales but also by pilot whales, sleeper sharks, and possibly other large deep-sea predators. What makes the giant squid story so uniquely powerful? beyond the scientific facts, beyond the breathtaking footage, beyond the sheer physical improbability of an animal that large hiding successfully from human science for so long, is what it says about the ocean itself. If a creature this large, this widespread, and this biologically extraordinary could remain essentially invisible to science well into the 21st century, what else is down there? The deep ocean is not a barren wasteland. It is not an empty cold desert. It is a living, teeming, dynamic ecosystem of extraordinary complexity, filled with animals that science is only now beginning to glimpse, in a world that human beings have barely begun to understand. The giant squid did not reveal itself to us because we became smarter or more powerful. It revealed itself because scientists became humble enough to stop shining bright lights into the darkness and patient enough to wait quietly, in the deep, and let the ocean show them what it wanted to show. Dr. Edith Widder, whose bioluminescent lure finally captured that golden shimmering animal on camera in 2013, has spent decades arguing that the deep ocean will only give up its secrets to those who approach it with respect, patience, and the willingness to be surprised. The giant squid, she says, is not the exception in the deep sea. It is the introduction. It is the ocean's way of lifting a corner of the curtain and whispering, "You have no idea what is down here." And the most beautiful and terrifying truth of all is that she is absolutely right. The kraken was real. The monster was real. And the ocean is still full of wonders that no human eye has ever seen, waiting in the dark, patient and ancient and alive, in the deepest places where the light has never reached and the stories have not yet been written.